Okay. Okay, we are recording. So again, welcome everybody. Glad to see you once again on our Monday morning meetings. It's always a great experience to have you all here. As always, I'd like to start with thanking our sponsors, Care First Health Plan, Satellite Broadcasting Association, Valley of the Sun United Way, Khajiit, and our most recent sponsor is Triad Wireless. So again, thank you to all of our sponsors. And again, we are looking for new sponsors. Actually, I hope to get out this week an announcement to everybody that we're looking for sponsors. So I wanted to encourage you to sign up and help support our work here. Second is that just a reminder that we need to have your contact information. There's a Google form. You click, it'll take you 5 minutes to put in your contact information. And that way we know who's participating and how people can find you. We actually do have a link at the top of our pages for our contacts. And you will find a listing of all the folks that have filled out the form. There's probably about 100 people on that list now. But encourage you to be a part of that. And then again, just a reminder that we have our Kibitzing with Colleagues, our Monday morning task force experience. It's an optional experience. After this meeting is over, we have an informal gathering for anybody who wants to stay online, wants to talk, share information, ask questions or whatever. So we encourage you to join us for that. And moving on, let's see here. So are there anybody new online? Haven't looked at the participants yet. Anybody who's joining us for the first time today? Going once, going twice? Okay. So again, our meeting schedule is March 7, 14, 21, and 28. And as Joy asked, I will send out a calendar invite, so make sure that we get this on your calendar. I thought, well, never mind. Anyway, so we'll be able to get that done. And with that, so actually, I'm going to jump down to quickly some announcements. Sharika, do you want to tell us about what's happening since I didn't do this last week like I should have? You want to tell us about your event coming up?
Sure. So yay, we're back in person, our 7th annual Hands-on STEM Fair to celebrate our students that have been in our Hands-on STEM program in South Phoenix will be on April 23rd from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Bay Gray Recreation Center. We're currently—
Sharika, excuse me, you want to just tell people who you are real quickly?
Oh, Sharika Jackson. I am an IT professional for the City of Phoenix Parks and Recreation Department, as well as the founder, CEO of Future Stars, that we provide STEM workshops and college readiness and the hands-on STEM program. Okay. So we are, as I was saying, with COVID, we had to go virtual for a couple of years. So now that we're able to go back in person, and some of the rules, because it's a partnership with the City of Phoenix, we're now able to host the activity, of course, with COVID protocols in place. But if your organization or you personally would like to sponsor the event, or, for supplies, it's a barbecue. We have the Black firefighters come out. We have a bunch of organizations that can also come out and be a vendor of a hands-on STEM activity to expose the kids to more activities and different things. It's in South Phoenix. It's the only and biggest event that's held in South Phoenix to celebrate STEM. So just put some info in the chat, as well as my email address, and I would love to have some of you come out. Thanks.
And I will, Sharika, when I send the update of the meeting, I will attach your flyer for everybody.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Any questions for Sharika? If not, let's just jump into our updates. Jeff, I see you're online. I think you got a lot of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I've been traveling quite a bit lately, and 2 or 3 really big important things going on that we need to stress. Number one, a couple weeks ago, we had a little event up in Flagstaff where the governor announced that we're going to be putting additional conduit and fiber on I-40. I know we've talked before about I-17 between Phoenix and Flagstaff, and I-19 between Tucson and the Mexican border. I-40 is from Flagstaff west, potentially to the California state line, depending on where we make that final access point. This is a huge win for that part of the state. Cities like Flagstaff, but also along the route, you've got cities like Ash Fork that are chronically underconnected. Kingman, which is booming right now and has some really great projects in terms of last mile with Allo, are going to need this, and others. So this is the first step for those of you who've read through our statewide broadband middle mile strategic plan in building out this network. Actually, the first step really was 17 and 19, but this is a validation of that. Again, I got this cool little souvenir of what we had. This is what it looks like. ADOT had a ton of these at the event. They had the big rolled fiber as well. It was impressive. ADOT's done a heck of a great job working on this. If you ever get a chance to go to their office up there, it's incredible. It used to be a movie theater, and they converted it into a government office, maybe the nicest state office I've seen. So this is a big win for the state. Obviously, we'd like to do I-40 East and some other routes, as you can imagine, but we have to work in partnership with the Navajo Nation and others to do that. We have those discussions underway. I spent like 4 hours on the phone on last Saturday with leaders from the Navajo Nation who are incredibly motivated to do stuff in their part of the state. So much so they've allocated $208 million specifically for broadband. So I definitely take my hat off to our partners at the Navajo Nation. Next up, the Arizona Broadband Development Grant. As many of you know, we got a great response. This is a good thing. It's a $100 million grant. We were expecting between 35 and 40 applicants. We got 87 applicants, over $400 million in projects. So as you can imagine, the competition will be stiff. That being said, we have some amazing projects, game changers for different parts of the state. The timing on this is going to take a little bit longer than we had hoped, just because of the quantity of projects and the complexity that we have to do analysis on. So please stay tuned. There were some people that thought we'd be done by February 28th, and that was the original goal before we pushed the application deadline from early December to the end of January. So plan accordingly. This is going to take a little bit longer than we thought, but it's definitely be worth it. Next up, I spent last week in Washington, D.C. at an NTIA conference, really focused on the upcoming IIJA funding, the infrastructure bill. We had folks come in from different departments like Treasury and FCC to talk about what's going on. The Coronavirus Capital Relief Fund, another program, really optimistic on what we can do with this money. Treasury in particular was incredibly flexible in what we're going to do. So I think you're going to see some really interesting stuff coming out of this. I also had the opportunity to meet with several members of our congressional delegation and really enjoyed the time to talk to them. Representative O'Halloran in particular is somebody who has been a huge advocate for broadband, and was able to sit down and talk about, where we've been, where we're going, and where we hope to be. So that was great. Overall, our congressional delegation is incredibly supportive of broadband. Senator Kelly, Senator Sinema as well. So we're in a really good position there. Lastly, I have to go to the legislature today. For those of you who don't know, they're going to take my position and put it into statute. Why is this important? A lot of the federal grants and programs we apply for, they're looking for this check the box sort of thing. We have ways to go around it, but ultimately it's important that we do this. Also, it provides a degree of continuity. As many of you know, the governor's term limit at the end of this year, and making sure that the next governor has an understanding of what we're doing and these programs are in place. So I'll be heading down there today, and hopefully that will go well. So that's all I have today, Steve. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I'm sure you have a lot more on the agenda.
So Jeff, what's happening with you getting some more help?
So expect announcement on that this month in terms of the assistant broadband director. We also have additional positions that we're going to be opening up. If everything goes well, we'll have those posted this month also. Hiring through the government process is not exactly, it's not a startup. So we have to go through a lot of different hurdles to make that happen, to get the headcount approval. But I will tell you, after my time in DC and understanding just the complexity of the BEAD and the other programs, we absolutely need to staff up. So expect to hear some more on that this month.
Are you in a position to tell us just what positions you're going to be hiring for, or don't want to talk about that yet?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to give you titles, but as you can imagine, digital equity is going to be a big part of what we're doing, as well as compliance with these federal funds. The compliance side of this is ridiculous. So we need experts, people who know what they're doing, who know how to navigate those waters. So we're going to continue our engagement with consulting firms to handle a lot of this, but we need folks to help manage these different processes who have done this kind of thing before.
Okay, great. Any questions for Jeff?
Hey, Steve,
Yeah,
last time when Jeff's bill or the broadband bill was going through, you put out a call to people to submit on the request to speak system their support if they were so inclined. Once the positions are in, they're in, but for a new hearing, some of the members tend to not look down at the older list. So I would encourage people, if they do support this bill 2687, to go back to request to speak and submit their slips. I did it last night for a couple of clients, and it just keeps it fresh for the new, since the bill is in the Senate now instead of the House, just keeps things fresh.
Hey, John, do you want to just explain to people again, because it's a little bit actually a pain in the ass, that if you don't have if you have an account with the legislature, you're ready to go. If you don't, can you just talk a little bit about the hassle with that?
Well, it's a kind of a way to assure a little bit. It's a barest minimum security to make sure that people are not just creating online ghost accounts to interact with the legislature, but they have a request to speak system. If you go to azleg.gov and look for the request to speak, you can, if you have an account, you can sign in and you can weigh in on bills, you can search bills, you can keep a personal progress list of bills. But the first time you create that account, it has to be done on site. There are kiosks down at the legislature in the House and Senate. The practice is that if you need to create an account, and if you can't get there, if you're from far away, hopefully within the state, but not necessarily, then if you have friends that go down to the legislature a lot, like I do, then you can have somebody set up an account for you, send you a temporary password, and then you can create your own. But it's a pretty decent system. It gives you a chance to search agendas and look at bills, and it's a good interactive system. And it actually functions now. So
I'm sorry, Jeff, what time is that hearing?
2 o'clock, I believe.
2 o'clock. Okay.
Jeff, Mark Goldstein. So want to make sure we, Kirk and I, have you involved. We are now committed to a kind of a provider roundtable, a breakout at the April 6th Big Data Southwest Smart City and Data Center event. That'll be an ATIC formation of a new committee that we've tried years ago and didn't ever get to critical mass. So I'm working on a contact list for providers that could eventually be a web presence. People have asked about how to find, providers by name and category, thinking about that, but want to see if I can enlist your help this week for some review and input probably on that list, and start looking at our program for a panel for the entire track and a breakout session for providers who won't have to have registered for the conference. That'll be a true hybrid. They can come physically to the event at the Willow Conference Center or join remotely. So wanted to make sure that was on everyone's radar. We'll have an ATIC board meeting this Wednesday at noon, discuss it further there, but I am building a provider list. I assume you don't have a spreadsheet or anything like that of providers, or do you?
It depends on how you define providers, because again, we have email contacts and phone numbers of different folks. In some cases, folks like John Kelly who represent providers. So
Right.
we can talk about this offline and try to
Okay.
figure out exactly what we're looking for. But absolutely, Mark, I'd love to help if I can. Steve also is going to mention, I'm going to be in Dallas next week. I will not be on the call.
Okay,
Was asked to speak at, I believe it's called P3C. It's a huge public-private partnership conference, specifically about what we're doing on our highways with broadband. And this is a big national conference, so we're getting some great publicity from this program. I believe Ben Blink's on the call today, and believe me, Ben Blink's name will come up more than once on there because he was the architect of this initiative.
great. So Ben, while he's mentioning your name, do you want to add anything?
Thanks so much, Jeff. Yeah, nothing too much to add there. It's a really exciting project, and I think especially when paired with the middle mile on the interstates combined with the last mile grants, it's a really comprehensive program. So looking forward to a lot of the federal dollars complementing that strategy and expanding it even more. But thanks for all your great work, Jeff. This is really incredible stuff.
So Ben, why don't you just tell people, so you were at the governor's office until fairly recently. Just want to tell people who you are and what you're doing now.
Yeah, you bet. I was up until September, I was Governor Ducey's policy advisor for transportation and technology innovation. So anything telecommunications related was within my portfolio. So worked really closely with Jeff. Right now I'm an independent consultant, Blink Public Policy LLC. Have been working on some rural broadband initiatives and also helping state and local governments with some of the implementation of the Infrastructure Investments and Jobs Act.
Great, thank you. Okay, anything for either of those guys? If not, let's move on. Mala, you're up.
Thank you, Steve. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We are working hard on the E-rate deadline, which is March 22nd, and this is for the application year 22-23. So schools and libraries have to put in their application by then, by March 22nd. So working hard to get them all to apply, as well as make sure that they are compliant with all the rules and regulations. Working also with the Navajo Nation Chapter House fiber build out. We have weekly meetings now on the progress, and they're going great guns with the progress. Of course, they're unearthing the fact that some of the buildings are older, and even to put in a rack there is a little hard. Working on the right-of-way environment clearances and pole replacements and those kind of things. But at least it's making progress. So I'm really delighted about it. On the E-rate front, we are still working on the FCC bidding portal for E-rate. The deadline for submission of comments is March 28th. But we are asking FCC through several organizations, through Shelby, through SECA. Shelby is the Schools, Health, Libraries, Broadband Coalition, and through the State E-rate Coordinators Alliance, to make sure that we get a little more time, because March 22nd being the E-rate deadline, all of us are heavily involved with the application process, and it gives us only a week after that to submit comments, which is really not enough for something that is so major. Funds for Analysis actually is doing a lot of analysis on the E-rate application so far in the last 5 years as a supporting document to FCC. And one of the things that came out, a few little things that came out actually, was that in the last 5 years, there's been a price drop per meg from 4.80 per meg to $1.39 per meg. Arizona is also quite at the top on getting the price down to this level. I'm really happy to report that the prices have come down almost 25 to 30%, since last year even. The average price per access point has also dropped about 49% in the last 5 years, from 1,400 to 716 per wireless access point. There's been a 50% drop in non-contracted service, that is month-to-month services. It's a record low now at 3.2% of the request, as compared to about 7% 5 years ago. So those are real good successes in making the program more affordable, not just available. With Emergency Connectivity Fund, the 10th round of application, 10th round of commitments had been announced. And so far, nationwide, they have approved more than 4.62 billion. 269 billion of the, a million of this has been committed to Arizona, of the 4.6 billion that has been approved nationwide so far. So other than that, I really don't have much to say. I think Cindy will report on the ACP program, so I'm not going to report on that. I'd like to call on Holly to talk a little bit about the telehealth webinar, Delaware's webinar that was presented by COSLA. Holly, would you like to share a few comments on the webinar?
Sure, Mala. So as you know, we're very interested in this pilot project that Mala is overseeing with Pima County Public Library to start an initiative with telehealth and in libraries. And so we listened last week, the head of library development and I listened to this webinar. Delaware has taken a lead with trying to help libraries make these services available. And the way that they have approached it is that they've been putting these kiosks in libraries. And it was very interesting to see the kiosks. They had photos. They're really nice. They are, self-contained private units that are in the library that, of course, have the internet access and an iPad. They have not to this date provided any of the medical equipment, which is something that we're looking at with our pilot, that we're granting the funding, and then Pima County will have some equipment there that will be available. We've been thinking a lot about these kiosks. One thing that they're doing is it's used for telemedicine, but it's also available for other services at other times. So it might be used for some workforce development for someone to go in and fill out, job applications, that type of thing. But it's a rather large unit that sits inside the library building. And one thing that we're thinking about is that if we would try to provide those kiosks in libraries, that not all of the small rural libraries that really need to be providing these services have the space for that. So we're doing some research on different units that are available that could be put outside the library. And of course, in Arizona, we have to think about climate control because certain areas of the state, we need to think more about, keeping it warm in the wintertime, and then other areas of the state, it's keeping it cool in the summertime. So there are a lot of challenges, and we're doing some research in that area, but it was helpful to hear what Delaware has done. And there were other state librarians and state library staff from other states, and we're all interested in looking at these services because we feel it's a natural for libraries to make this service available. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Holly. So Janet, I know you're online and I know you're partnering with this project. Do you want to say anything more?
Yes, thank you. Let me switch my camera so you can see the top of my head. You know, it's been really wonderful to network with the other states and see what other folks are doing. I've been following the whole kiosk action for like 15 years. And we did also meet states when Mala and I were doing our investigative reporting, who said, you know, you can buy a heck of a lot of tablets for the cost of a kiosk. And it's not a one size fits all solution. So the pilots that we're working with in Pima County, one of the libraries actually is dedicating a room. And when we did a pilot project up in Tuba City several years ago in one of the chapter houses, Red Lake Chapter House, it was a matter of putting a occupied sign on the kitchen door and closing the kitchen during a certain amount of time when they weren't using it as a kitchen. So one of the libraries in the pilot projects has a room, which they're dedicating, which is great. And then we've also spec'd out some medical grade tents to use in the parking lots temporarily for one of the other sites. So, you know, we're looking at all the possibilities for all of the requirements, including space. And it really would be great. I think it's wonderful that our libraries are also investing in vital signs monitoring, because it can also empower people to take their own vital signs, you know, to be able to use the space and the technology for as many people as we can and get people connected to healthcare. So it's a really exciting project. And the director for the Pima County Libraries is a really great guy and is all on board, Ken Zambos. And it's moving forward so that this week, Kim and I will be working on stethoscopes so that we can do live heart sounds. And a big concern of libraries, and rightfully so, of course, is the data piece, where you don't want to be recording people's names, people's data, but we can create a patient account from point A to point B using stethoscopes to do live heart sounds without creating a patient's medical record. And that's where we are right now. How do we do this while keeping all of the data away from being recorded, other than by someone's medical provider if they have one, or the own patient taking care of recording their own data and sharing it with whom they would like to. So there's a lot of moving parts, but it's all coming together and it's a really great project.
Hey, Janet, why don't you just remind people about who you are? We always have new people on this call.
Thank you. My name is Janet Major. I'm the Associate Director for Inclusion and Digital Health, fancy name for outreach. I do outreach for the Arizona Telemedicine Program, and I also provide technical support. I write the technical protocols that attach to making the clinical integration of technology successful. I work for the Arizona Telemedicine Program, and we are also a Southwest Telehealth Regional Resource Center, which is great because we do a lot of work in the Four Corners area and for the 5 Western states.
So Janet, while you're on, do you have anything else that you want to report?
Oh, yes. I want to share just briefly, and I know I've announced it, but tomorrow's the big day. Our US Distance Learning Telehealth Grants are a really great grant program, and there are some very unique things about it, and it's a great opportunity. If you know anybody who's even remotely interested in writing a grant, we'll be covering a lot of grant skills in the workshops that we're doing. So tomorrow, the topic for the entire hour and a half is RUS DLT grants, how to write a good one. It's an interesting grant because it can go to federally recognized tribes. It's for folks in rural areas with populations of 20,000 or less. There's a 15% match that can't be from another federal source. But there are a lot of great partnerships right now and people who are looking for opportunities. I know many of the people on this call helped with Chicanos por la Casa and this great grant that they wrote. Unfortunately, they weren't awarded, but it also helps magnify the concept of space and telehealth in libraries and other public places through the use of mobile health programs. So you could write a USDA DLT grant for a mobile health program, which would be awesome. And then any of the libraries that have invested in digital resources you would have access to when you park there. So I would love to invite everyone to that program tomorrow from 10 to 11:30. And then Thursday, our format has been Tuesday's the grant workshop, Thursday is one-on-one help. And we had a great time. When we did this in February, we helped individually 4 different locations with their grants, with their grant partners, with finding appropriate letters of support. So if you can join us tomorrow and you're interested, join us again Thursday to ask specific questions about how it applies to you. And then in April, the hot topic for this grant writing series is a broadband grant update. And the folks at Learn Design Apply Inc. are professional grant writers, and they have folks who are experts in specifically broadband grants. So they are going to be covering NTIA grants. Let me see, I've got just a quick list. USDA Community Connect grants will be on the slate for April, as well as NTIA broadband infrastructure, the tribal grants from NTIA, minority communities, digital equity capacity grants from NTIA, and broadband funding best practices. I've also spoken to Jeff and Kimber Lanning, and Mark Goldstein also said that he would be interested in helping if we were to do another set of these grant workshops either in April or in May that would focus specifically on Arizona. There are opportunities specifically to and for Arizona, not just through the Arizona Commerce Authority, but through foundations, through other sources. So we would like to do one more workshop in partnership with folks from this group that would be specifically with a focus on Arizona grant opportunities.
So just a reminder that those of you who should have received the announcement of our meeting today, that a lot of these workshops and things are listed with the contact information and the dates to be able to register for these events. So if you haven't looked at that, you might want to go back and take a look on how to be able to find that information.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, is that it, Janet? So Amala, did you have anything? Holly, you have anything else that you wanted to add?
Steve, I just put in a, sorry, Holly, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying that was it for me.
Okay. Steve, I just wanted to draw your attention to NDIA receiving 10 million from Google for a Navigator Core program. The details of it I have put in the link. I don't want to take up too much time now. If anyone wants me to talk about it, I can do that next session.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Back to you, Steve.
Okay. Anything else? So moving on. So Cindy, and I don't think Nicole is on the line, but Cindy, you want to talk a little bit about what's happening with digital inclusion?
Sure. I'm Cindy Hogan. I'm an AmeriCorps member serving with Literacy Connects in Tucson as their digital inclusion ambassador. And I'm a member of this network also, AZBSN. We're starting a digital inclusion network under AZBSN to talk about digital inclusion broadly. We're holding meetings for practitioners twice a month around specific topics currently, and hoping to start another meetup space soon for discussions centered on digital inclusion generally, and that would be probably a once monthly meeting. We're currently, the practitioner meetings, we're currently talking about the ACP and doing some outreach for that new program that came out of the EBB. I have to say, over the weekend, I got a map off of the NDIA listserv. It's a map by ArcGIS, and it shows enrollment, EBB enrollment by eligibility. So across the country, they've mapped out how many, what % of those eligible in each area of the country had actually signed up. And the most amazing percentage, what just happens to be Northern Arizona, the Four Corners area, the Colorado Plateau based. And so it's a lot, looks like the Hopi and Navajo reservation, but they're sitting at 75 to 100% of people that were eligible actually signed up. It's kind of amazing. And I'll put a link to it in the chat. So I don't know how they got that done, but Arizona's done a really good job getting people signed up for this subsidy. And then I'm also working with Pima County on the strategic plan for digital access, inclusion, and adoption. And in my committee, I'm on the digital inclusion committee, and we are currently mapping the current digital literacy assets throughout Pima County so that we can figure out who is giving classes and promoting digital literacy throughout Pima County so we can find out where the gaps exist so we can start filling those in as part of this strategic plan. And then I'm also working with a group co-founded by United Way in Tucson, the Elder Alliance, and Pima Council on Aging. We're looking at addressing digital inclusion barriers being experienced by older adults. And we have a meeting for that coming on this Friday to chart a path toward action in this population. And I can put a meeting link in the chat to anyone who would like to attend that. And I think that's all.
Okay, any questions for Cindy? If not, we're moving on. Sophia, you online? I don't think Mylan's online, and Kelly, I believe you are. You guys have anything that you want to talk about regarding Department of Ed?
Good morning. Let me open up my camera here. Turn the light down. Hi. I don't think that, I mean, Sophia's not here, so there's no updates there.
Kelly, can you just tell people who you are, please?
Yes, sorry. My name is Kelly. I work for the Office of Digital Teaching and Learning with the Arizona Department of Education. And Sophia and Mylan also work for the Department of Education. I'm sure you all know them. I'm the new one. And no updates from them and none from my department as well. We've just been working on this publication and working on creating some working groups, and I will have updates in the weeks to come.
So Kelly, I don't know if you want to talk about the survey you did and the results.
Sure.
Or
Yeah, would love to. So let's see. In November, for 30 days, we put out an assessment, which was a survey. And we put this out to all of the districts and charter systems in the state of Arizona. And we were trying to do it at a higher level, a district level, collecting information about where the LEAs stand with their digital teaching and learning practices. So what resources do they have? What do they use as far as devices, LMSs, connectivity, hotspots, digital content, and really just trying to capture what's happening in the classroom, and then also what they're using for tools and resources. And then trying to also collect from them their goals. So establishing where they are and where they want to get. And we had that open for 30 days and we had a 21% response rate, which we know will increase. This is not a one-time deal. It wasn't a one and done. We will continue to assess probably twice a year. And from this assessment, we are learning and establishing the KPIs so that we as a state can identify again where we are with our practices. And then the goal of this office will be to help establish the resources, identify resources, allocate resources, and really use purchasing power and create communities where LEAs and school communities can come together to work together and better their practices and help reach the goals that they have established. So it isn't meant to be prescriptive and telling schools, here are the things you must do. Rather, we want to collect the information and offer a menu of resources for them so that they can be successful in their own way.
hey, any questions for Kelly?
This is Joy Whiting, Apache County School Superintendent. I don't have a question, but I just wanted to tell everyone on this meeting, I know I mentioned it last week on the kibitzing, but the aggregate expenditure limit that Steve was so willing to bring forward to everybody's attention, it passed a couple weeks ago. And I just wanted to tell collectively everybody on this meeting, thank you for the attention. There's some things in process to fix it long-term, but for short-term, it's been accomplished. So thank you so much.
So they didn't pass the long-term solution yet, is that correct, Joy?
You know, the long-term solution has a lot of moving pieces to it, in my opinion. There's language in the law that needs to be corrected, and then there's just an overall getting rid of the old law. How that happens, I'm not really sure, but we're working on it the best we can, and we'll see what happens in the future.
John, do you want to add anything to that?
No, Joy described it perfectly. There's a lot of interest on the part of several legislators, including Senate President Karen Fann, who this is her last term in office, last year in office. And she is trying to motivate some discussion about that, but that will not happen during this legislative session. If it happens, the discussion will take place over the summer and we'll probably come back next winter with a brand new legislature and a new governor and new all kinds of stuff.
Okay. How fun, huh? Okay, Derek, you online? I don't think so, but. Okay. And Wes, I don't think you're online either. Anybody have an update to what's happening with the Final Mile project?
This is Mark. I don't know how many responses were received, but the proposals against the 5 open RFPs, the second tranche of 5, were due late last week. So I believe that, submission cycle is now closed, and Final Mile will evaluate and select vendors for the next 5 projects.
Okay. So before we move on to our presentation this morning, so Kirk, I know you're online, and Mark, you talked about the Data Center and Smart City IoT Infrastructure Summit. So you want to talk some more about that and what's happening with that generally? And then Mark, you mentioned a breakout session for providers. So Kirk, you want to say anything?
Good morning, everybody. I'll turn my camera on. Take that one out of my ear.
Hey, Kirk, you
yeah,
have to tell people who you are first.
Hi, Kirk Bush, Big Data Southwest, and producing the Data Center and Smart City Infrastructure IoT Infrastructure Summit. Yeah, the event's moving forward at light speed. We got great panels and everything combined. We've combined the 2 tracks to kind of consolidate things. We've got a broadband and digital equity panel. We've got a workforce panel. We've got folks showing up from Google that are going to also be on the workforce development panel. The actual theme is STEM kids are our future. Sharik, I would like to meet with you later offline too and see how we can kind of roll in what you're doing with what we're doing. The chief science officers at the SciTech Institute are going to be helping run the event. They are also getting 10% of the net proceeds donated to the SciTech Institute. We're going to have a fun kind of EV-AV pavilion too. That'll be kind of fun for everybody, that people don't have to register and pay for the event to attend also. Where we're going to have the Waymo cars and Too Simple and a lot of that kind of stuff on display out in the parking lot. As it relates to the provider roundtable, Mark's really the organizer of that, and it's going to be a separate breakout where we're just basically using the event venue to facilitate that meeting, and the timing is good also. I think Jeff is going to also be heading up that with Mark, but Jeff's kind of busy, so that kind of all lies on Mark now, and a lot of updates will be worked out, I'm sure, at Wednesday's board meeting. Mark, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I don't think I have much to add, but we will, I believe the way the schedule is, roll right from the broadband panel on the general conference track into a breakout, which will compete with one element of the main track, but will be a broader meeting for which we do hope to get a lot of providers who may or may not attend the conference to participate. It'll be fully hybrid. People can come on site just for that or as part of the conference, or participate remotely. And then it'll be followed by a reception. And I believe those that come, even if just for the broadband provider panel, breakout, can stay on for the early evening reception.
Okay. And I did put a link again in the meeting announcement, and I will for this week to be able to find that event and be able to register and so forth. So anything else, Kirk, Mark?
That's it for now, Steve. For me.
Okay. So I just want to say, and I think it's pretty obvious to all of you, Arizona is awesome. got amazing people doing incredible stuff. And thanks to people like Ben and Jeff and many others who are on this call, and Mala and so forth. It's just amazing the kinds of things that, and the recognition we're getting for the great work that's happening here in Arizona. So I just want to just say thank you to all of you who are doing such great stuff here in Arizona. And of course, that's not to mention all of the others who are on this call and others out there in the state who are doing awesome stuff. So it's just pretty phenomenal, in my opinion, about the work that people are doing. So I just want to thank you all.
And Steve, we want to thank you too, because you're doing awesome work and pulling this whole crowd together, you know, going on almost 2 years now. So
thank you.
and we appreciate that too.
So I'm sorry. So anything else before we move on to our presentation this morning?
I like Cindy's amen, by the way.
So if there's nothing more, any other announcements before we move on? Going once, going twice. Okay, if not, we're going to move on to our digital access resource highlight presentation, and want to introduce Alan Smith, who is Manager of Community Leadership at Consumer Reports. And they have a number of things happening in broadband, including some things here in Arizona. So I'm going to stop sharing, Alan, and I'm going to turn this over to you, and you're on.
Cool. Thank you all. Good morning. I can say from my perspective, from a national organization, Steve's right. Arizona rocks, and y'all are in many ways leading the league on a lot of these broadband area things. So yeah, thank you all for having me today. Consumer Reports has been working on a couple of different things that I want to share with you all. So I hopefully now you have some slides up, but I would also just like to make this as conversational as possible. And having heard from all these updates and all the cool work y'all are doing, there continues to be so much that I can learn from being on these calls, and hopefully continue to plug in and assist y'all on what you are working on. So like Steve mentioned, I'm an organizer. I work with Consumer Reports, not so much on the side of the magazine and the reviews, which many of you all might be familiar with, but more in our political wing, the rabble rousers, the troublemakers within Consumer Reports. So I want to just take you all through a couple of things that we're working on, and then we can maybe spend a few minutes thinking about how to plug into what you guys are doing. And specifically, I was just taking some notes, and I'll be following up with some of you directly afterwards. Cindy, it sounds like your access work is really fascinating to me, and maybe something that I can help with in some way, shape, or form. So brief update on what we're doing at CR around broadband. I'm going to talk about a new thing that we're trying, kind of CR chapters, CR community hubs, and one of them which we're trying to start in Arizona, and why we are doing that and what that means. Hopefully, where those hubs are leading to interesting local change and interesting ways we can engage with you guys, and trying to do our part from the perspective of a national organization to address accessibility, affordability, and equity of broadband access in Arizona. So a couple of big top items that Consumer Reports has been working on the national level over the last year and a half, doing a lot of advocacy work around the infrastructure bill, trying to do what we can to protect certain things in that bill, specifically around broadband. And one of the things that is in that bill that we're particularly excited about, and how that rolls out coming soon, is the broadband nutrition label. We've also been working on a couple of other things at the national level, trying to watch router fees and other hidden fees on people's internet bills, and checking in on the, we just had a victory recently around the FCC ruling about competition within apartment buildings and other large complexes, so that multiple people can have more choice in what broadband they can get if they live in those large buildings. A lot of other things at the national level, but I want to talk to y'all today more about this research project that I've been leading. It's called Fight for the Fair
Alan,
Internet.
can I interrupt for just a second? And can
Please
you
interrupt often.
Go back
Interrupt
one,
often. Let's do
go
lots
back
of
one
interrupting.
slide. So
Yeah.
you talked about the FCC rules protecting people who live in apartments, et cetera. And that was an issue that came up at our last meeting. Can you talk a little bit more about that, please?
In what sense? I can tell you that the new rule is essentially that there has to be more competition for people in those situations. So a lot of landlords have had kind of handshake deals with individual ISPs to lock in buildings, co-ops, apartment buildings, et cetera. And the FCC is going to be cracking down on that and changing the rulings such that that is less of a problem, or that there's more competition available for people so that they are kind of getting the benefits of competition to their pricing and to their access.
Okay, thank you. Go on, please.
Cool. So the research thing specifically that we've been working on is something called well, now it's called Fight for a Fair Internet. Previously, as I have been talking about it, it was called Let's Broadband Together, but due to a copyright issue, now it's called Fight for a Fair Internet. What we've been doing essentially is trying to get a sense of broadband cost across the country. So we ran a test over the course of the summer and the fall where we asked everybody in the Consumer Reports membership world to run a speed test, a single speed test, and then at the same time upload a copy of their home internet bill. So we had about 55,000 people start with us, and we ended up with about 35,000 of those bills, which we're in the process now of getting a PDF reader to kind of tell us what we've won. But hopefully that big data set that we've been collecting for the last couple of months is going to yield some new information about both kind of what broadband is costing Americans, and then hopefully also some overlays about how competition changes that cost and what we can and can't say about how effectively consumers are being educated about what they need. So we're kind of looking at these bills on a couple of different angles. But my job particularly, besides trying to get a bunch of people to give us their broadband bills and all of this work, has been to kind of dig into building a community of people who care about broadband. And we're trying to, specifically in the kind of the mobilization world, which I'm living in at CR, we're trying to kind of bring out how we can create a community of folks who this is their issue, this is what gets them out of bed in the morning, this is what they care about. How do we plug them into work that's happening around the country? So my comparison here is that all the folks on this call, y'all are up here, y'all are professionals and doing amazing things to change the way that broadband happens in Arizona. The people who I think I'm mostly engaging with are interested in this as an issue, but this is not their profession. This is not the thing that they are doing all the time. This is not the thing that moves them necessarily like financially, but it is the thing that they might care about and want to be part of. So we have all these cool researchers. They gave us these bills, and they have been sort of banging on the door of Consumer Reports asking what's next, like what else can we do? Where else can we go? So Consumer Reports is pretty good at like getting those citizens to call their congressperson or to sign this online petition. But we've got this cohort of people who are even more dug in than that. They want to do more. They want to be more engaged. I want to just pause and do a quick, interesting case study that was on a different topic than the Let's Broadband Together thing, but it might be kind of elucidating to you all to see kind of what I'm imagining and what I'm thinking about here. So 2 years ago or so, we did another big research project. It wasn't about broadband, it's about PFAS. PFAS are plastics in water. This is sort of the forever plastics that have been, there's 3,000 or 4,000 different chemical versions of this, but essentially we're discovering more and more that PFAS are in everything. They're in all the water that we drink. They're all over the place. And Consumer Reports wanted to figure out like how much and where and what's happening at the tap in different places. So we started this water testing project in the summer of 2020. And the way we started it off was we did these 2 big webinars for anybody who wanted to raise their hand and come learn more about PFAS. And we wanted to use those webinars to drill down to figure out like, can we get people to do water tests in kind of every different region of the country so that we'd have a statistically significant sample. But another thing that we discovered, a kind of a positive benefit, is that we discovered a bunch of people who happened to be in the same space. They were all in Seattle. They were all in this call. They were all introducing themselves in chat saying, hey, I'm from Seattle. And those Seattle folks asked to be connected with each other. So this was, volunteer generated. They asked with their permissions, I connected all these people over email, which resulted in them forming their own little group. And they wanted to learn more about this issue and explore what they could do about the problem. And through their learning, they identified a specific note that the Department of Health in Washington State was considering around PFAS. They then came back to us. They asked our experts to kind of weigh in on the note. We said, hey, this is a good note. Let's strengthen it. We think this should be strengthened in this and this and this way. We went back and forth with this group for a while. And finally, they decided that they wanted to come back and ask all of their fellow CR members in Washington State for help. So we sent an email to all our lists, which was several 100,000 people in the state of Washington, trying to drive comments. And we ended up driving, 2,300 comments, individualized, weighing in on PFAS comments to the Department of Health in Washington State. They get on average 5 to 10 comments per note they are considering. So this was a pretty big deal for them, and I think absolutely strengthened that piece of that note, that piece of, it's not legislation, but that lawmaking process. So that's the case study, right? What happens when we have all these people who we accidentally activate, who are engaged on this issue? They want to weigh in, they want to be part of what's going on, but like I've been hearing all morning, we're talking about a very complicated tableau of different things happening in Arizona already, right? There's a lot of moving parts. There are things at the infrastructure level. We're talking about like new wires and new lines and things going in. It's very hard to imagine an individual citizen figuring out how to engage with. We're talking about grant writing processes that are, as you guys have already been mentioning, arduous, complicated. They can be following up with those things can take years. So like, how do we get people to plug in? Consumer Reports has been thinking about that. We've created these things, these CR hubs, which kind of, we ask the question of like, what could we accomplish if a regular part of our work was finding these groups of engaged citizens based on locality and issue, maybe starting at the state level, maybe even drilling down to the county level when we get our kind of ducks in a row. Seattle showed us that we kind of have those people. Broadband work that I've been working on for the past 2 years has confirmed that in a lot of ways. These hubs would be like local collaboration spaces, members getting together and first of all, teaching each other and themselves about the issue. And then second of all, figuring out what they can do, what we can work on. We launched our first broadband hub earlier this year. Last year. What year is it? We launched it in the fall of last year, and it was in Georgia around broadband. Mark was actually good enough, Mark on this call right now is actually good enough to come talk to this group of people in Georgia, but it's a group that is interested in equity and accessibility around broadband, and they've been working together. The thing on your screen right now is just a Washington Post story. We managed to connect one of the few, one of these nascent hub members who had a really interesting story about rural broadband access in Georgia with a Washington Post reporter, which starts to be kind of an example of what I think these hubs can provide to folks like you, stories as well as activists, people who are kind of feeling the burn around broadband enough to want to get involved to support things that are happening in their community. And they might start to be things that bubble up to the level of I'm not sure if they're going to fill out all those forms and become an official lobbyist like I was hearing about earlier, but that kind of feels like a space that these folks might be interested and willing to jump into. So why am I talking to you all today? Our next big thing, we're about halfway through trying to start a hub in Arizona. What we learned from the Georgia hub, well, we already knew this, but what we relearned from the Georgia hub was that broadband is a fairly complicated issue. There's the technological aspect of understanding the bits and the bytes. There's the social aspect of understanding that it's more than just accessibility. There's also equity and all sorts of other issues in terms of education when it comes to broadband rolling out. We discovered pretty early that we need to get everybody on the same page if they're going to actively work together on things. The way we're doing that in Arizona is we sent an email to everybody on our lists, on our consumer reports list, who participated in that Let's Broadband Together study that I was mentioning at the top, and said, hey, come learn with us. We're going to do a 4-week class. The class that we're using is actually by a group called Shaping EDU, which is a group of, I think there's probably a good bit of overlap from this call and the Shaping EDU folks, but I'm not exactly sure how much. So I'll just say that they are kind of thinking about broadband and how to push for equal access for everyone. And they're a group of, I think, academics and philosophers and thinkers and doers based out of Arizona State University. This class that Shaping EDU put together is a MOOC that ASU supports and runs, and we're driving people through that over 4 weeks, talking to them along the way, providing them kind of inputs and ways to engage, and then hopefully coaching them up such that they are excited to stay with us once they've learned enough about broadband to feel like they can figure out how to get their head around this complicated issue. Next up for us is trying to then plug them into the complicated world of what y'all are doing. And I think that I know that most people on this call have been working on this particular issue for much longer than I. So I can speak from personal experience when I say it's kind of like drinking from a fire hose when you first jump into broadband policy. There's a lot of stuff, there's a lot of issues, a lot of different things. So we're just trying to scaffold this learning such that people don't feel like they are immediately flooded and overwhelmed, but can find their place, learn what they want to learn, reject the other stuff, and just kind of keep coming back so that they're having an interesting conversation. Now, hopefully in about 2 weeks, we'll have our first crop, our first class of the Arizona hub ready to go. And those people hopefully will be trying to figure out how to plug into what you guys are doing. I want to just kind of open up any questions about that kind of rapid fire thing I just ran through. And then I want to just ask you guys, what do you think we should grab? What do we think we should be working on? Where in your particular world do you need an engaged army of citizens? My mind goes to education and outreach. My mind goes to, it sounds like a lot of the work you're doing, Cindy, but I would love other thoughts, other ideas. As I get these folks kind of marshaled and moving in the same direction, I want to start inviting them to this call. I want them to start tapping into all the cool stuff you're doing. But I just was realizing that as I was listening through, I was like hanging on by my fingernails and doing a bit of Googling just to keep up with where you guys were. So it's about kind of staging that access such that people feel like they are able to weigh in and be useful and be a contributor, not just kind of surfing the wave.
So Alan, one of the things that you and I talked about when we chatted about this is for people to understand, which you obviously got a sense today, that there's a lot of stuff in this space that's happening in Arizona. Not to say that the whole world is covered, but for me, one of the starting places is for people to really understand. As I think I mentioned to you, when we started the task force and we put together our report, it kept growing by leaps and bounds. And part of that was that we used to hear all the time that Arizona's not doing anything. And it's really important for people to understand how much is happening and then to be able to go from there about, okay, what do we need to do and how do we plug in? So we're certainly interested in collaborating with you and helping your folks to understand what is happening here in Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly right. I think that the thing that you know, the balance, right, is giving people enough information that they can handle it, and then also keeping them, you know, giving them enough to give them a sense of like where their own agency lies, and where they can reasonably affect things. And I think that just speaking personally, again, as someone who is kind of a multi-issue organizer at Consumer Reports, broadband has been a really fascinating challenge for me, because so much of what you need to really change broadband infrastructure is big capital investment. And that is often hard for citizens to figure out how to plug into. But one of the things that's really exciting about what's happening in Arizona, as you just mentioned, Steve, is that we're kind of like the access is coming. And that those wheels are grinding forward. So then we get to the questions of, okay, so now we have access. Is it affordable? And do people know what they have when they have it? How are we educating them? And how are we kind of like giving local activists the tools to go out and be those kind of digital connectors?
Well, certainly digital inclusion is a big priority. And, you know, there, as you said, there's a lot of stuff that's happening in the infrastructure side. And now, you know, lots of stuff also happening digital inclusion side. And certainly if anybody knows about that, it's Cindy. Excuse me, but I certainly feel that one of the big areas where citizens can really get engaged is that digital inclusion side.
I would love questions, so please fire them at me. I want to just say a little bit more about that Georgia hub, which is still kicking along, and that, like I said, Mark Goldstein was nice enough to come and talk to them a little bit about what's happening at the federal level. They've all gotten their teeth into trying to figure out how they can be like a citizen watchdog group, because in Georgia, one of the things that they felt wasn't particularly obvious was how these federal dollars are being spent and who was getting access to them and that sort of thing. And so they've been trying to kind of plug into understanding how the block grant comes to the state, how it's divvied up, who gets to make those decisions, and then what points there are in that decision-making process for citizens to weigh in. Just another wrinkle on what, you know, Consumer Reports generally, our people are fairly, just as a general rule, fairly educated, fairly wealthy, and are kind of looking at like where they have a lot of opinions and they have a lot of ideas coming in. So the Georgia Hub process has been about like helping them shape those ideas and guide them towards something that they find useful.
Questions
Just a
and
quick
comments
question.
for Ellen?
Just the cohort that's at ASU, are they the same category, or are they college students, or a mixture, or what's the makeup of that cohort?
We did invitations to everybody on the Consumer Reports list. So it's mostly the cohort that I was just mentioning. And then we've got a couple people from ASU students who were connected to through the Shaping EDU program. But mostly this version 1.0 has been with CR. They were already activists with CR in some way. So they'd already taken some step with us, signed a petition, done something else, and we knew they were in Arizona.
So Sharika, to answer your question, Shaping EDU, and Derek, I know you're online, and I don't know if you want to add to it, that there are a number of people that's actually a national group led out of ASU, and it's open to people who they meet. I think it's every week now online. I know Mark participates, I participate. I'm not sure who else from this group, Baron Carr Jordan and others, Derek, when he can, participates. And
then Lisa Gusinelli, who coordinates that
yes.
group, comes to our group.
Yes, so we do have a lot of cross collaboration here between the two groups, but those meetings are open. And if you're interested, you're welcome to participate. And Derek, do you want to add anything more about that?
Oh, Steve, thanks. No, I mean, I think you covered it really well. Yeah, national group of collaborators helping to, extend broadband to all.
Yeah.
Thinkers, dreamers, doers. That's what they call themselves.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Any other questions? We're about out of time. Any other questions for Alan, or Alan, you have anything else you want to add?
I don't. I mean, I will probably be doing some direct follow-up with a few of you. It was a real blessing to get to kind of hear what everyone's working on. And thank you, Cindy, for dropping. Cindy just sent me her email address. So I will be trying to figure out, how we plug in, and some of you will probably be getting some outreach from me, inviting you to talk to this cohort as they kind of emerge knowledgeable about broadband and looking to jump in.
Well, Alan, thank you. Actually, I met Alan through Shaping EDU, so that's how we connected. So we have a lot of mutual interests and participants with that group. So if there's nothing else, I think we're about to end for today. But I did want to mention just a couple of things real quickly. If you don't know, and we've been trying to send out the chat from this group, but if you're interested, you can download the chat. If you go to chat, to chat and you look at in the right-hand corner on the bottom, you'll see the ellipse. And you can click on that and download the chat directly. And I want to say that if you're interested, there are a couple of files that have been put into the chat. You cannot, once you download that chat, you cannot download those files directly from the chat. So if any of you want to scan through quickly the chat and see if there's any files that you want to download, you might want to do that now. So anything else for the good of the order before we end? So if not, again, you're all welcome to stay in Kibitz if you so choose. And if not, we'll see you next week. Thanks all.